Welcome to Public Health Matters, where we talk about what matters in public health. I'm Jane Goodman, Public Health Network Strategist with the Division of Public Health and Community Services. And I'm joined today by Liana Perez, Public Health Nurse. Welcome, Liana.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
Oh, we're very happy to have you. So you're a nurse, and we're going to talk about mental health today. But before we do that, I would love to do just a short, brief COVID update with you. And let our audience see that we have some higher transmission in the state of New Hampshire now. And we'll pull up that national map, and you can see that New Hampshire is no longer all green. We have quite a bit of yellow and even a little bit of red, a little bit of high transmission. And so just a reminder, if you do check the CDC community levels and you see that we're yellow or red, you should probably consider wearing that mask indoors if you're not able to stay at a good distance from people, or if you're in a crowded situation. And also one thing that I just read, that the CDC is still recommending masking on public transportation and on airplanes, for example. And I did just take a trip and did wear my mask, just want everyone to know, because you are in a small confined space. And so we know from the science that the closer you are and the more crowded it is, we tend to have more transmission. So we want to keep everyone safe. We can zoom in on the state of New Hampshire, and then you can see our Hillsborough County, which is outlined there in the bottom. We're yellow currently, which is medium transmission. So if you are at high risk of illness, you need to talk to your healthcare provider about whether you need to wear your mask or take other precautions. I say if you're at high risk, wear that mask. Stay up to date with COVID-19 vaccines. And of course, get tested if you have any symptoms, fever, nausea, vomiting, any of those symptoms, a cough. If you suspect anything, get one of those rapid antigen tests, at least preliminarily, until you can get a PCR test. So we want to remind people to get fully vaccinated, to stay up to date, protect yourself, protect those that you love. We have this great graphic here, so we just put her up. She makes me happy. And it's not too late. So we were talking about before the show, we still are offering some incentives for those who are needing a first vaccine at our clinic on 18 Mulberry Street. So you can come on in and you dial 589-4500, press option 2. We'll remind people they do need to dial the area code now. So don't forget the 603. But a reminder, it's not too late to vaccinate. It's not too late to get your booster. Start or complete your COVID-19 vaccine series today. And we'd just love to have you come in, or if you see our van around town, come on over. So Liana, welcome again. It is Mental Health Awareness Month, and you are one of our public health nurses, and you're also doing a lot with behavioral health. So tell me about your background. Let us know where you've been and what you're doing and what you're working on primarily at the division.
So my background, I've done my preceptorship in public health in the state of Maine, working between their 7 clinics at Greater Portland Health. Mm-hmm. I got to see a lot of the different populations. Portland is known as a center of refugees, so they have a very large Somalia population. So we really got to see what different cultures and ethnicities and refugees need in regards to health and how we can help them. Mm-hmm. And also in regards to social determinants of health, how different factors in which people were brought up in mm-hmm. or experience can affect someone's health. So additionally, we worked a lot with the homeless population, mm-hmm. which we do here with the city of Nashua as well. I've worked at the hospital doing med-surg and oncology, and mm-hmm. in the emergency department at Elliott Hospital.
Wow. So now we get you, so we're thrilled. And we're very happy that you're working with some people up on the 2nd floor in behavioral health. So tell me about some of that work that you guys have been doing up there.
So we've been providing a lot of education. One of our projects we're doing right now is Gizmo's Possum, A Guide to Mental Health. And it's a book that's delivered for 3rd and 4th graders in a language for them on what is mental health, how do I know when my mental health needs to be addressed, and what can I do to improve it? And also one of the my favorite things about the book are the pictures, but also like what is a trusted adult, how to talk to trusted adults. So they do have like a puppy looking in the mirror and it's super cute. So, and he talks about whether you need to practice in the mirror or practice to a stuffed animal, just really trying to get comfortable in speaking up and knowing who to talk to and when to do something about your mental health when you know that it's being affected.
So you're going to libraries, or how are you getting
We
that
are
out?
going to libraries. So far we've been to the National Public Library and we have Litchfield coming up. We have reached out to a few school teachers to bring this material into schools. So we kind of just started in getting out into the community, so we're really looking forward to the next places that we go, but really hoping to be more like in schools.
And it's important to start in 3rd and 4th grade with some of this, because one of our biggest problems with mental health is the stigma around it and the discomfort with talking about it or understanding it. So I think one thing that we do in public health, so we always gotta, toot public health here, but one thing we do is prevention. So we're really looking at starting in the schools with these school-age children to hear these stories and to get that message. And so that's just so important when we're talking about our Mental Health Awareness Month, which is why we brought you here to talk about mental health awareness. And are there any other projects that you want to mention, or we can come back to them if you want? That seems to be a main one right now.
Yes, so it's just a lot of training and education. We've gone to the NASHUA youth group to deliver education on what is gender identity and how can we be accepting and all-inclusive to people that may not identify as how we identify, so to be accepting of everyone. Also working on a project with the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation. They had given us a grant 10 years ago to help implement a lot of different programs. So right now we're really looking at what programs have been implemented and how have they affected the community. And one that had just passed last Saturday was Take Back Day, in which people were able to bring unused prescriptions to their local police departments or some other locations that were listed.
And Take Back Day is such an important piece of behavioral health and substance misuse, because we found through research that, if somebody had a prescription and it were laying around and it got in the wrong hands, you don't know if you're going to be that person that becomes dependent on that substance. And so that was a really important step. How did it go in Nashua? Do we have any idea?
Not yet. I do not have any of the statistics or findings that were from last weekend. But what CDC did put out for the year 2021, that drug overdose was the 3rd leading cause of death in children and in young adults. So whether that was intentional or unintentional, that unused prescriptions or prescriptions that are being held in an unsafe spot can still lead for risks of death or a suicide.
So it's really important that we continue this, and hopefully the Charitable Foundation will see the value of us collecting those every year. And we go out to every town, just so people know, in our region, and there are boxes in every town where you can drop off those prescription drugs. Now, if you miss Take Back Day, there are alternatives, right? You can drop things off at the hospitals, I'm pretty sure. Are there any other locations? Some
hospitals have them. You'll be more successful in probably finding them at your local police department. So you can just walk in. So I know for the Nashua Police Department, as soon as you go through that front door, it's going to be on your left-hand side. You don't have to go in and tell anyone like, hey, I'm bringing these prescriptions. You can cross the name off of them, but it's still a safe drop box place that you can bring your unused prescriptions to as well.
And it really it can be anything. It doesn't have to be opioids. It can be really, it doesn't have to be painkillers, because it doesn't matter. We should not have extra prescription pills laying around and getting into the wrong hands. And once you've finished or you don't need to continue with something, get rid of them and safely dispose of them. And I think that's the other thing. We don't want people flushing them down the toilet and, getting into the drinking water if you're on a well, or whatever the case may be. So so thank you for reminding me that that went on. And our viewers know that there's also that option of, again, I believe in both lobbies of Southern and St. Joe's. There's a box, you put it in a bag, and like you said, no questions asked. It's very anonymous. So we'll pop up. May is National Mental Health Awareness Month. You started to speak a little bit about that with some of the programs. But I'm just going to read something from NAMI that is who declares this Mental Health Awareness Month. And I think it's a great time to have a Mental Health Awareness Month. It's my own opinion. But it's May, and it's beautiful out, and it's a great time to take stock of things, and that if you're not able to get yourself out in this weather, or you're down, I mean, these are some signs that you could be really looking for, because it is time to get out and about and do things, and it's a good trigger, I think, to say, hey, wait, something's not right here. So for mental health, mental health is an incredibly important part of overall health. With a growing number of Americans experiencing mental health symptoms, we need to join together to advocate for improving our nation's mental health care system. So we have work to do, and we found also with the COVID pandemic that mental health issues really compounded. Some of that was due to isolation, people unable to get the help they needed during COVID, not wanting to leave the house, maybe not having access to telemedicine. So there were all sorts of issues. I don't know if you found in your work an increase in issues, or does it feel steady? Or
So at that point, when the pandemic first hit, I was transitioning into the emergency room, and we did receive a steady increase of youth and adults seeking assistance for psychiatric problems. Mm-hmm. A lot of children and young adults, older adults, have expressed feeling down, depressed, had attempted in taking their lives, and parents were overwhelmed with changes in behaviors, mm-hmm. More disruptive behaviors of children acting out. And we found that when children aren't able to socialize, be in school, run outside and play, that a lot of their emotions and feelings get built up. And one of the things is emotional intelligence, and that's mm-hmm. being able to recognize your own emotions and recognize others. And they found that there are many different words to express emotions, and the average person can typically only name 10. But to be emotionally intelligent, you need to be able to name over 30, which can be very hard for...
I don't know if I can do that.
It's very hard for almost any person to do. So when we're not able to fully express how we're feeling, it's then displayed in behaviors. Mm-hmm. So it's not only children, it's adults too. When they have mm-hmm. time struggling to express how they feel, they then show it in behavior. And that's what we've noticed in communication. It's mm-hmm. not always verbal, it's nonverbal communication too. So sometimes words aren't going to express how someone feels, and if someone's not able to express it, again, a lot of the time we'll see changes in behavior. Mm-hmm. And so that's one thing to look out for when someone is having a mental health crisis or challenge, is those changes in behaviors. Mm-hmm. So whether they are, you notice that they're more isolated, or even if they're coming to work, we call it presenteeism or absenteeism, when they're there, but they're not mentally focused and they're isolating and retracting back from their work or their peers, that they're just not present. So that's one thing to look out for.
Mm-hmm. So that is definitely. So I have this graphic that I want to just kind of run through with you, because one thing about mental health, again, we want to have this awareness because we want to reduce the stigma. People get down, people get anxious when, we'll talk a little bit after, like, when is it too much? What are the signs? So one thing that we talk about, and I want to go on to the isn't side. We have a mental health is, the audience can read that while I'm reading the isn'ts, but it's not a sign of weakness. It's not shameful. It's not all in your mind. It's not always something negative. And it's not something you decide to have, like, oh, I'm going to be depressed today, or I'm going to be depressed. So those are things that we have to keep in mind. Something to think about only when it feels broken. So I think that's an important thing, because our mental health is important all the time. Whether or not you suffer from a disorder, an anxiety disorder, stress disorder, whatever it is, our mental health is always important. You don't have to have a diagnosis to take care of your mental health. An interchangeable, I can't even read it, term with mental illness. So no, it's not interchangeable. And feeling good all the time. Mental health isn't something you can snap out of, and isn't fixed, and it isn't fake news. So just a little reminder to everyone out there that these are important things. And it is changeable, but doesn't necessarily go away. So we talked a lot, you mentioned the emotional intelligence and the kind of recognizing that. How can you, what other signs can we look for if somebody's having an issue?
So,
or within ourselves or with somebody else?
So when we're looking at ourselves, and sometimes it's hard to do, and I'm sure everyone has heard of this word, mindfulness. And it's that inner dialogue that we have in our head, and it's whether or not, being mindful of everyday things around us. Like right now, it feels cool in here, the lights are bright. But as you go through your day-to-day, having that recognition of when your mood or behaviors start to change, and when they start to become negative, and when they start to impact you in a negative way. So if we could use this month as a way to be more mindful of our thoughts and our behaviors to make them positive. And a lot of the time we are our own harshest critics. And one thing that I like to do is as like a negative thought comes in, recognizing it, and that's hard to do, is first recognizing when that thought comes in. But if you're able to counteract it with a positive thought or a positive behavior, and just to, when you are able to bring more positivity and light into your life, you are what you attract. So you will then find that when you start to change the way that you think, that your life starts to change as well. So I think that's something that we can do for ourselves, is being mindful and trying to change those negative habits. And even if it's just for the month, I know people always talk about like the 30-day challenges. Once you start doing it, you really start to make
it is habit changing. They say 30 days to break a habit or start a new way of doing things. So and when you say like, mindfulness, like, should you schedule it in? I mean, how does that work? Because it's not a habit people are used to having. People are in a lot of hurry these days, rushing to get to work, drop the kids off, pick up people. There's just so much on everyone's plate all the time. So how do we remind ourselves?
I think one of the best ways to do it is right before you get out of bed. Just setting your intentions for the day. We hit the snooze button, yes, but maybe before your feet touch the ground, or unless you're like me, you need to sit at the edge of the bed, because if you continue to lay down, I'll just fall back asleep. But before you get out of bed, if you're sitting up or you're laying there, just give gratitude, give thanks, think about the things that you have in your life, or maybe the things that you need to do that day. And try to have realistic goals and expectations, but it's that mindfulness of, before you just jump out of bed and start your day, maybe just starting it with some gratitude. It sometimes I've gone into hospitals and inpatients where we've done a project where you write 50 things that you're grateful for. People are like, 50? That's a lot, and it is quite a bit. But when you think about it, like the fact that we have like clothes on our back, clean water to drink, clean air to breathe, a car to drive, a roof over our head.
Yeah, just the basics we need to be grateful for.
Then you realize how many things we do have to be grateful for. So I think even if it's just 5 minutes, 3 minutes at the beginning of the day, just having those thoughts of gratitude, or recognizing even how you feel in the morning, and just trying to offset that with positive thoughts.
And then what about I think that's just a great tip, because we can all remember that, And I'm picturing, as you're saying that, I'm like picturing my bed and going, oh, I could do that. Just to give myself that pause before I really start going. Because once I start going, I don't stop. So, but what about that person that really can't make that visualization? How do we recognize that? How do we get them help? What are some of those resources?
So again, just going back to recognizing, when you notice changes in behavior, changes in speech, changes in the way someone is thinking, and when they're close to you, I think those changes are a lot more recognizable than someone that doesn't live in your home. But sometimes it's okay to say, hey, I call it, or notice and wondering, hey, I've noticed you haven't been talking so much. I've noticed you look down today. I'm wondering, is everything okay? Or even just asking, hey, what's going on today? What's on your mind? Or I've noticed you've been quiet. What are you thinking about? And just asking them a broad, open-ended question will allow them to maybe, hopefully, say what's on their mind. But if you directly ask them, hey, you don't look so good. What's going on? Sometimes being more direct can get you an answer as well. But the resources that we have, there's quite a few. And I think, when someone, real quick, you had talked about destigmatizing. And I think, kind of destigmatizing what therapy and mental illness and mental health is, and how those two words are not interchangeable, is extremely important. Talking to our friends and family that, hey, going to therapy is okay. Having therapeutic and conversation is okay. It's okay to talk about your feelings. I think a lot of people don't want to burden someone with their negative thoughts or behaviors, but when you go and ask them directly, that lets them know that maybe it is okay to talk about this. So giving them that leeway, again, letting them know that therapy is okay. And then when you notice an increase in worsening behaviors and it becomes a crisis, there now is the rapid access point within the state of New Hampshire that you can call. And there are some other resources. So one thing we don't particularly talk about as much, and I know sometimes it's hard having difficult conversations, is people who are experiencing violence within the home, whether that's domestic violence between partners or in the family. And one of the resources that I just really wanted to bring up is Bridges. They are an excellent resource within our community. And sometimes domestic violence is a lot more common than people realize. So if you notice people are wearing clothes that aren't fit for the weather, so if they're wearing excess clothing, baggy clothing, someone could have some, body image issues, or someone could be hiding, injuries. And when you notice injuries in different stages of healing, different bruising, you can mention that to them. But it's important not to push anyone to getting help, whether that's for therapy or in a crisis situation. You can just let them know that you're there for them and these resources are available to you. So Bridges is very excellent that they can provide that therapeutic conversation. But if someone needs that, we've had instances where they're able to rehome the family that day. So they're just an exceptional and great resource.
And I want to back up because you talked about was it notice and wonder?
Yes.
And I think that's a great point. And a lot of times people are very afraid to address things. It's uncomfortable, it's awkward, does it cause an argument? Will it make them act a certain way because I brought it up, or make them more depressed, or those kind of things? And this is what I've learned working with some of our behavioral health folks up in our office, that, just if you ask someone, I'll use, unfortunately, suicide as an example. Are you thinking about harming yourself, or does that cross your mind? That's not going to make that's not going to make them commit suicide. That's going to let them know that you're worried about them and that you care about them. That it doesn't, or so, are you having mental health issues? Or are you, now, no one would say that, but are you down? I've noticed that you seem down. That doesn't necessarily make them more down. It's not that power of suggestion. And I just think that was an important point made to me, especially in terms of suicide. You can ask about it, because it's not going to make someone do the act just because you said it.
Yes.
So.
And sometimes with the more of the difficult conversations to have, it's honestly better and you'll get more of a truthful response if you do ask them straight out. Have you ever thought of ways to harm yourself? Do you have a plan? Have you ever tried? And also with like domestic abuse, is someone hurting you? Is so-and-so like hurting you? And when you ask those direct questions, they're a bit harder to get away from. And it is a difficult conversation, but sometimes the difficult conversations are the most important and need to be had.
Absolutely. So we'll circle back to like self-care. Oh, you mentioned mindfulness in the morning. What other self-care can we do? I mean, let's treat ourselves. It's the month of May. The weather's beautiful. Let's do some self-reflection. Take some time out for that self-care. You know, what does that mean?
So I have this quote that I actually just want to read, and it's by Sarah Fabian. Oh no, sorry, wrong one. It's by Leslie Ralph. Share something, create something, teach something. Go where you are masterful and add value to the world in any way that is accessible to you. Feed the hummingbirds, pick up litter, volunteer in your community. Big or small, it doesn't matter. It's the meaning behind it all that makes the difference. So sometimes whether, you know, you're a bookworm and you just want to read or paint or sing, it's those little things. And sometimes when people are so we'll use depression for an example, just taking a shower, getting out of bed, cleaning your room, decluttering. If you can set a small goal, a little goal that you can just realistic and can overcome, sometimes it can change your whole day. So having that self-care, that hygiene, or doing something that you love or that's meaningful, small or big, I think it can impact you in a way that it can just hopefully take you out of that funk. And if you realize that things are just getting worse, seek help.
You know, it's interesting that you say that because I just read it and it was a novel that I was reading and it was a quote from this guy's mother and it said, when you can't think of what to do next and you're in a funk, organize your sock drawer. And it really like resonated with me because I'm like, that's so true. Because it's like even if you're just doing that task and accomplishing that, it just refocuses you, even if it's mindless, but it kind of gets you out of that and then keeps you propelling forward. So I think that is a good tip to like find something to do. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing these ideas with us. This is great information for all of us to have. I hope everyone will be aware of their mental health during the month and their loved ones, their family, their friends. Check in on people because we're all getting back to this new normal, and it's really important that people have human contact and that they reach out to one another and that they know people care. So thank you. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes, and thank you for having me.
And that's all we have for this week. But we would like to remind you to visit our health clinic. Immunizations on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. STD, HIV, HCV testing on Wednesdays and Thursdays. And lead testing Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. You can call us for an appointment, 603-589-4500, and press option 2. Have a great week.